And welcome to another episode of Room 36. Today we have Aleksejs Ivashuk. Hey, man.
Hey, Daniel. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. How's it feel to be here?
It feels good.
Okay.
I like the atmosphere here. It's nice and quiet.
I like your shirt.
Thank you.
Where'd you get it from?
Oh, that has a bit of a story, but basically my girlfriend got it for me. Yeah, to put it in a nutshell.
Okay. How long you been dating?
Well, we've been together. I don't think we've even dated, to be honest. It's a complicated story. Yeah, I mean,
You're not dating your girlfriend?
Well, I mean, that's such a loaded term, I think, and there's also a lot of different cultural understanding about it. I mean, Germans don't even have a word for dating, right? Where I was born, they also don't have such a concept. So it's interestingly enough, it's a very Western concept, but basically dating, as I understand it, is when you go out to get to know somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with my girlfriend, we met in Kiev 3 years ago, almost exactly 3 years ago. She just began to travel on her own. And she wrote a message online saying, hey, I'm traveling for the first time. Does anybody want to take a walk around the city? And I replied, and then we met and we had a nice walk around the city.
And you went out to get to know each other, and so you dated technically.
No, but that's
according
not
to your
dating.
definition.
When somebody writes online to take a walk, you don't go out on a date with, right?
Okay, but I think it's something more because I went out with you to get to know you.
Yeah, but we.
I don't think that wasn't a date.
Yes, so
it would be what, some romantic interest behind going out to meet.
Well, initially, no. I mean, it's just like you just meet the person and you take a walk. I know that a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I can make this girl a girlfriend soon or something like that. No, I'm not that kind of guy. So I just went out, without much expectation, and then I realized, she's a nice, naive girl. It's a walking sunshine. Yeah, she's very. She made me think of, I called her like walking sunshine because she's smiling all the time and she's so positive about everything. She's into like birds singing and flowers and things like that. And that's not always a good quality to have in terms of, I mean, the world is not always that nice. So some people who are that good and nice and kind, they can get into trouble. So she was, later she was thinking of like traveling around the world, and she was saying, I'm thinking of going to Turkey, like, and maybe Middle East. And I said, okay, do you know somebody? And she's like, no, I don't really know anybody. Like, do you have any plans? Like, no, I'm just going to travel. And I told her, why don't you travel in Europe first? Just to
with me.
Not yet. I didn't say that yet. I said, just gain some experience first. And at that time, I was in Latvia, already back in Latvia. And I said, hey, you can come visit me in Latvia as well. And that gives you a destination. And maybe we can travel together for like a week as well. And
so you met in Latvia?
Yeah. So after we met in Ukraine, we kept in touch, and funny enough, I began to be concerned about her, travel plans. So I persuaded her to like direct her travels to Europe more. And so she traveled in Poland, Czech Republic, and then she came to Latvia to visit me. And then we realized during her, couple weeks stay in Latvia, we realized that we like each other and things kind of developed fast. And then she went back to Ukraine, and there was some uncertainty whether, she's going to come back to Latvia.
And then you missed her.
Yeah, we missed each other.
Oh,
After some weeks of her departing from Latvia, she came back to Latvia, and we traveled together for like a couple of years before we arrived in Ukraine.
Okay, why were you worried about her going to Saudi Arabia, for example? Do you think it's dangerous for her to travel there?
I mean, she grew up in a small village in Ukraine, so she's not familiar still
with the Arab culture,
with the world, with different cultures. So sometimes she said things like that. Yeah, I like skinny dipping, so I'll go skinny dip in Saudi Arabia, and I just have to go like, oh my God, no, they're just gonna stone you to death. And she didn't understand why, so I had to like tell her about some cultural differences that exist in different countries, and how it's important to know these differences sometimes.
Okay, what do you think of online dating? These apps, Tinder.
I never used it. I mean, I've many of my friends obviously use it, and some of them now have families because they met somebody on Tinder, and
thank you, Tinder.
and then they had a little bit of a Kinder surprise, as we call it, one of our friends. So they now have children, and so they're happily married. Well, some are happily married, some are not happily married. But anyway. So for me it was never my thing. If you recall, like I said, I don't even like buy into the concept of dating itself. So like online dating for me is a bit strange. I just prefer to get to know a person naturally, and then I think things just naturally, if there's that chemistry, if there's that attraction, I think a lot of people misunderstand that they have to like push that or like navigate that in the sort of strict way, but I think things develop naturally, so if you allow that process to happen.
So it shouldn't be forced.
No, you should just be yourself, and once you are yourself and somebody else is also being themselves, and sometimes magic happens that way. So
trust yourself. Shout out to yourself.
Yes, exactly.
Alex, I want to give you a scenario and see how you handle the situation.
Sure.
So you have a kitten. You love this kitten very much. And she's getting a bit bigger. And she escapes outside, unfortunately, and climbs this tree. And it's a difficult tree to climb. You can't climb after your kitten. So your kitten's up there in the tree, meowing, can't get down, and then an eagle, lands on the branch above. And an eagle, it's not a chicken. It's dangerous.
It might taste like chicken. I don't know.
Probably. And it's eyeing your kitten in a very threatening way, very menacing way. What do you do in this scenario?
Okay, first of all, the reason I was laughing to a little bit, I'm not a cat person. That's why I was laughing. So,
you're like, eat that damn kitten. I don't want it.
Possibly. Yeah, I mean, where do I start? You're in trouble because I can get into any topic in fine detail. But yes, first of all, I'm not a cat customer.
Okay, then you're gonna have to make a choice. Do I want to protect this
yes, I mean,
creature
I guess
that I don't even really like?
I mean, there must be different ways. I mean, you could climb the tree. If you have a ladder, maybe call the fire brigade, which I mean, people do that sometimes. I'm just having a hard time getting over that barrier of not liking cats. To think about how I would want to save a cat, and the reason, I mean, I have to be fair, to myself. I have to say that, I mean, one of the main reasons why I don't like cats is that did you know that cats are one of the
don't tell me
few animals in the world that torture their victims before they kill them.
Oh, I think that's interesting.
Yeah, so that makes me like cats less. I would say.
That reminds me of a video I saw where it's like lion saves wildebeest or gazelle. Lion saves gazelle, and you can see from this video how the lion really does like protect this gazelle from other lions or hyenas. I think it was trying to attack it. But it's obvious it's going to eat that gazelle.
Yeah.
And the video ends like, oh, the lion saved the gazelle. But, no.
Yeah, if you, as long as you cut off, if you edit the video enough, you can make it look like he...
Yeah, and get millions of views.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like this podcast will get. Speaking of lions, have you ever seen a lion?
In a zoo. Yeah, I've seen lions in a zoo. I have not been to Africa. I have not to a safari trip or anything like that. So, yeah.
What are your emotions in a zoo? Are
As
you
a
a fan?
No, I guess not. No, I'm not a fan. When I was a kid, I kind of felt bad for the animals because I mean, it's
Yeah.
obviously they're in prison. So
Oh, I have a question. Do you think there's some evolutionary reason why cats would torture their prey, their victim, before killing it?
that's a good question. I am not the person who would know such. I just read some articles about that. So, but I don't recall anything in those articles explaining why they do that.
I know you're not a biologist, but you studied philosophy, so maybe from a philosophical point of view, there's some explanation.
Well, I know that the cats hunt sometimes, not because they want to eat, but because it's practice. So that can be an explanation that they're not even interested in killing something to eat it, but they're just practicing their skill of hunting. So that could be the reason that they're just playfully torturing some bird or.
Do you think maybe they feel guilty in the last moment, like, oh?
I don't feel guilty.
You don't think so?
No.
Part of me thinks their instinct sends them on this hunt. They catch something and then they're like, oh, no, I've got to kill it now.
See, but then I guess they wouldn't want to do it again. But then they do it again and again. I guess different cats is different for different cats because I know my family in Latvia, they have a summer house and sometimes like cats from the neighborhood come over. It's a big property, so they come on over and unfortunately kill some birds on our territory. And my father noticed that some particular cats are particularly vicious and they're bigger troublemakers, whereas other cats they're more chill, so they just hang out and don't do much.
It's beyond me how a cat can catch a bird. I don't think I've ever seen it live. But we had cats and they would always bring some bird.
Well, the key is sneaking ability, level 99 sneaking ability. So yeah, so yeah, I mean that's key for cats, I guess. Just like for lions. And
what's your level of sneaking ability?
Oh, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah, you should.
Is it 99?
Ask my girlfriend because sometimes I just take advantage of how there's some sounds surrounding her, like in the kitchen, and she doesn't know that I got up, for instance. So I just, in a sneaky way, come close to her.
Whoa.
And I just stand here and I don't say anything. I just wait for her to realize that I'm there, and that scares the crap out of her. So,
wow, that would scare me too, I think.
But I just, want to come close and wish her good morning. So, but yeah, obviously, if you do it this way, then it scares people. But yeah, it can be fun sometimes.
Okay, I still want to get back to your philosophy.
Sure.
Why'd you study philosophy?
Oh, that also has a story. So it was my first year at university and my first month. And, during that time, all the students are out binge drinking. And
weren't you?
This is, by the way, Canada, not US. US, the drinking age 21, whereas in Canada...
it's 19 or 18, right?
18 in the province where I studied,
and
19 in Alberta, from what I understand. But I've been to Alberta. I've never lived there. Yes, so in my university in Manitoba, all the students were out drinking, having fun because it's their first time away from home.
Was one of them named Daniel?
No, that's much later. That's in Vancouver. But anyway, and I was not drinking. I was trying to figure out what am I gonna major in. So I sat down and I
think that's a great time to drink when you're trying to decide that.
Yeah, maybe, but I probably would have made some bad choices. So I remember that night where I just took out the course calendar, and it was this huge, thick book of all the courses and the descriptions of the different courses. And I remember I already had an idea. I wanted to major in political science.
Yeah.
But I decided to sit down and look at all the requirements. A very, very wise thing to do, kids, by the way, if you go to university. Because I realized that in the third and fourth year of doing a poli-sci major, you have to focus on provincial and municipal politics. political science in Manitoba, Canada. And I realized, no, it doesn't make sense for me to dedicate my time to that topic. So unfortunately, I knew I was going to leave the province. I knew I was probably going to leave Canada. So I knew that provincial and municipal politics in Canada was not going to be my thing.
Would be useless.
Yes.
Probably.
So I looked at psychology, but and I love the psychology field, but in the modern age, psychology has become more and more empirical. So to put it in plain language, it became more about statistics. It became more about gathering just numbers and data, and that's rather dry. So
And less about what? As opposed to
about
what?
qualitative psychology. So it's less about like interpretations. It's less about subjective topics, and
It's about what they can prove objective.
yeah, it's more about like, okay, how can we prove that this person likes the picture? Well, it depends how many glances they give to this picture. So we sort of
It's a funny example.
yeah, but there's a
type of
lot of
thing.
funny studies, and they're taken very seriously. Like, okay, yeah, if this guy looks at the picture,
means
glances at the
this.
picture 5 times, then it means that. So that's also part of what I didn't like about empirical psychology, is that it pretends like, okay, it's all like purely scientific, but it's no.
So you push psychology aside, and then
Yes, then economics I pushed aside as well, because I was like, I knew you had to focus in third, fourth year, you had to focus on economical theory, and that's like complete la la land. And economics stresses that, okay, let's just look at when you do economic theory, you have to push away all reality, like detach yourself from reality and just focus on pure theory. And that I always had a problem with economics, and that's why some of the best economists in the world, they make some really absurd like decisions and give advice about like shock therapy in Eastern Europe. I don't think I have to like go into details about how that was a failed policy. So yes, so you can't always like detach reality from theory. I think it's necessary to have them connected.
So then you decided philosophy.
Then I was kind of depressed. I was looking for the coursework. I was like, where am I gonna like study? I didn't know what I was gonna go with. And then I started to read for different fields I never even planned to study. And then I started reading about philosophy, and it was really in depth, really profound material. And I never studied philosophy before, but I knew it was important. Especially sitting down and reading through all these course descriptions in that book, I realized that wow, this is very important. This is all that we as human beings consider to be the most important thing in life. And so I decided to go with philosophy, and of course my parents were shocked.
Do you have a favorite philosopher?
No, that's a very common question, but I don't have like one favorite philosopher. I have a number of philosophers that I like. I like Nietzsche. I like Sartre.
Do you have somebody who maybe opened your eyes to this world of philosophy, or to something new that changed you?
Again, it's not about any particular philosopher. It's not like a religion where you're like, okay, I pick this one. This is a winning.
Jungism.
Yes, so you can learn from all of them. So it's a very and you have to learn from all of them. You can't just focus like on one type of philosopher and then just close your eyes on the other ones, because you have to look at the critique of that one philosopher. So it's much more complex than following a religion.
I've got a question. Say I met your girlfriend and asked her, "Hey, what's Alex's philosophy?" How do you think she'd answer?
She'd smile.
She'd smile?
She'd smile. And,
what kind of smile?
She'd say that I like honey and hugs and
wow.
make food for her. And
so you like the small things?
We don't. I mean, we talk
food.
about some philosophy, but I mean, but sometimes I get frustrated. How do I put it this way? It's a bit of a digression, but I think you'll see the point. What do you think is like the number one the number one job where people kill themselves. So basically, the highest
would I guess?
risk. I mean, yes, I think people usually know dentists are.
I've heard
top of the list.
dentists.
Yes.
I've heard Kazakh, Latvians. No, not Latvians, but the Baltic states have a higher suicide rate.
they
but
have
Koreans, I believe Japan.
But I'm asking more about like careers, professions. Yes.
Okay.
So dentists, are definitely on.
Yeah, but I don't know why. Lawyer's quite high, isn't it?
Yes, also quite. But usually the
English
top
teachers?
spot is taken. No, I hope not. But the top spot is usually when this profession is actually included in the surveying. The top spot is usually taken by logicians, so people who deal with logic. And why is that? That is so because they study logic, but then this world. It just
makes
people
no
are
sense.
so irrational in many things that they do that it can be frustrating to deal with that. So my point was.
Do you think it resonates? Does it resonate with you? Sorry for interrupting.
A little bit because
are you a logician?
in terms of philosophy? Because I mean when I studied it, and for instance, logic. In terms of you also had to study logic. And so when somebody says something, but then they just contradict themselves, like literally like 10 or 15 seconds later, and then what are you supposed to say to them? I mean, if you say that they contradicted themselves, of course they're going to become defensive. And
to be honest, for me, that's kind of humorous.
Yeah, it can be. And that's a very good point because I always try to use humor to constructively, try to explain the person. Like, look, you just said the opposite like 15 seconds ago. So that's what I usually do with my girlfriend when we get into philosophy. Where I mean, she like many people, like most people in the world, she sort of sways from one thing to another. And what I really appreciate about philosophy is that allowed me the discipline to not sway so easily within myself. Within these different topics, decisions, promises, and so on, and to dedicate myself to whatever I'm doing. And for a lot of people, I've noticed it's much more difficult. Even in what is crazy, even in the professional fields, it's so frustrating where a person says that, okay, I'll email you on Tuesday, 2 o'clock. And of course, chances are, they're not going to email you. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they have other things to do.
I can be guilty of the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. But you'll find that I think with people who have studied logic or philosophy, they're more reliable in this way, in this particular way, because they
maybe they're more critical too of lack of logic.
Yes, and also I mean, when you do philosophy, I mean, it really sharpens the mind in terms of having that mental discipline.
Okay, I have an odd question for you. What's the most absurd, ridiculous thing about life?
About life.
First about life and then about yourself.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. Nobody asks. Somebody usually asks about meaning of life, but something about the most absurd thing about life.
I asked Chris on the first podcast.
How I guess in itself it's sort of a contradiction. So I mean, one thing to keep in mind is that there's actually nothing in itself wrong to be irrational or to be contradictory.
Yeah.
But about life, obviously, that mostly there is non-existence, and there's like a little bit of a glimpse of existence, and then it's like back you go to non-existence. So again, that's the most contradictory thing. But in a way, there's some beauty in it because it should make you appreciate so much more. And I think a lot of people forget that, and they try to come up with rationalizations for how that is not so, even if it is so.
Okay.
And with these sort of explanations and theories and rationalizations they're ready to cut each other's throats for.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean. So that's the absurdity. I think it's not even. It doesn't have to even have to do with life itself. It's how we deal with it, and how I think many people are more afraid to live than to die. because they're afraid to, go out and experience a different culture, or they're afraid to try something else, or to talk to somebody who disagrees with them, or to, and so on and so on. Yes, so I think a lot of...
that would make sense from an evolutionary perspective, though.
Yeah.
To protect yourself.
Yeah, but then you're kind of hurting yourself as well, right? From also evolutionary perspective, if you don't have that diversified experience, then you're not as well-rounded. So, so it's again, that's, you gotta have a balance. Obviously, don't go out like skydiving with a parachute. It's something new to try, but
I sort of think the most ridiculous thing about life is that people really believe in things. I think it's cute, actually. It's endearing for me to people. That people believe in things so strongly, and like you said, are willing to fight over them and all these things. I kind of like that, and I like choosing my oddities that I deeply believe in as well. But I like this process of choice more so, rather than thinking, okay, by default, I was put into this package and believe in this social construct. I like looking around and saying, okay, let's believe in this ridiculous thing. Even though it might not be real. Yeah. Like superstitions.
Yes. And the crazy thing is, our strongest beliefs, and the beliefs that we hold closer to our hearts, they're the ones that we don't talk about, even with ourselves. We don't, we don't justify them. We just like irrationally believe in them. And there's a philosopher, Kierkegaard. Did I just call him Kierkegaard? Soren Kierkegaard, sorry. And he made an interesting argument, saying that we are dearest beliefs are subjective beliefs. So and we hold them irrationally. So we don't justify them, right? And that's why people react so in such a sensitive way when somebody criticizes their religion or their love of nation.
It's like a part of them. It's inherent.
Yes, but it's also something that they don't put up to discussion. They don't want to talk about, like, why do you believe in this religion, right? So, because they see it as like, oh, I'm not going to unpack this, because if I unpack this, this is actually a danger of me stopping my beliefs. So,
it's my foundation.
So
I like that you put it in that way, like open to discussion.
Yes.
Like maybe we all have some things that are not open to discussion. It's just settled. It's my core, my foundation.
But the twist is? The twist is that if you don't unpack your beliefs, if you don't unpack yourself in respect to these beliefs, then you're weak, because you never deconstructed this, term that's commonly used in philosophy.
I love that term.
So basically, in simple language, you didn't never like unpack these things to figure out and justify for yourself that yes, these are the proper bricks to build this particular belief.
Alex, what do you have left to deconstruct for yourself?
Well, you constantly have to, unpack yourself in a lot of things, and that's, in respect to people, I think this is a really good example. In my relationship with Vitalina,
shout out to Vitalina.
Yeah, hi Vitalina. She'll love this podcast. So we resolve our differences really fast, because we started to live together pretty much from the get-go.
So you have to
not only live together, but live together and travel together at the same time. Because as I mentioned,
a lot of pressure.
Yeah, as I mentioned, two years we traveled together around Europe, and went to Georgia as well, and Cyprus. And through living together, you really get to know a person. Okay. A lot of couples, they don't start living together, and then once they start living together, they realize, like, oh my God, this person is this way. I don't know whether I can live with this. And then, of course, traveling together is a whole other topic, where somebody really gets to know somebody else, because you see
That's
them.
Interesting. Why? Because you see them in a new environment and how they react?
Yes, and also it's a kind of environment, because that's a kind of environment where you have some sort of stress. I mean, you're in a new place, you might be in a situation where you lost. You might be in a situation where you have to make a critical decision because you're running late to catch your plane or whatever. And so all of these things are very normal in travel. I mean,
And you become more vulnerable, maybe.
Yeah, and different people react differently. I'm the sort of person that in a crisis, almost automatically, how do I put it?
Go to the bathroom.
No. The opposite. I
hold it in.
I sort of become assertive.
Okay.
I want to say aggressive. Assertive, aggressive. They're sort of synonymous in these situations. And
you're
I say,
a fighter.
okay. Yeah, sort of.
Put on your boxing
gloves.
I
have these sort of leadership qualities, I guess, that naturally come out and say, okay, this is what we're gonna do.
Okay.
You shut up. Stop panicking. This is the choice we have now, because especially when it's even more than two people, you can have quite a mess in terms of if you have a crisis and then somebody's panicking, somebody else is thinking we should do this, somebody else is thinking we should do that, and so.
What would you tell a person who, in a stressful situation, just curls up and cries, who doesn't behave assertively in that way that you described?
Well,
what
I just
advice
picture just like.
It's not for me, by the way.
Yeah.
Asking for a friend.
Yes. You obviously just have to try to calm them down and try to explain to them that okay, this is a situation. This is not the time for it now. I mean, things will become worse if we keep panicking. If you have to just put him on your back and just carry them, but literally and metaphorically speaking. So I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people can't handle these sort of situations, and because of the panic, things obviously can only turn for the worst. So it's important to have decisive action in these situations. And so, yeah. But not everybody likes, these sort of assertive qualities, and they would rather talk about the situation than try to resolve it. So, yeah, so it can be quite complicated.
Sure. I want to kind of segue into your NGO work.
Sure.
You have this big NGO project. I know you spent a lot of time on it.
Mm-hmm.
And how many years already have you been working on this? And for our listeners, what exactly is your NGO project?
Okay, sure. So I have to go back 4 years. That's when I returned to Europe from North America. Most of my life I lived in US and Canada. And when I returned to Europe, I realized that I need to be involved in this field of trying to resolve statelessness in the European Union. And so at the same time, I know that it's a very sensitive topic. Some governments really don't like this to be talked about.
Which ones?
I don't want to mention names, but Estonia and Latvia. Especially Latvia. So I prefer to keep a low profile and just be a researcher and lecturer in this topic. So occasionally, I go out to some, for example, conferences or summer courses. Some of them are run by the United Nations. And so I lecture on the topic of statelessness. And this summer I will likely do that again once the borders open up. And so it was a year and a half ago I decided to step up my game in this field, and that I had the chance to move to Ukraine, and so I have residence here now, besides having basically residence in the European Union. And I decided to be more involved in this field, so I became more engaged with major organizations that are dealing with this topic of statelessness in the European Union and globally.
What are those organizations?
European Network on Statelessness, Institute on Statelessness and Inclusion.
These are based in the EU.
ENS is based in EU. So it's more of a regional network. So it's not just EU, it's Europe in general. So EU is obviously different, European Union and Europe. So, but they are an alliance of all organizations that deal with statelessness. And Institute on Statelessness and Inclusion, they are a global NGO, and they try to resolve statelessness in the whole world. In the entire world, and and there's other ones. There's obviously more local organizations that I have contacted and in touch with, and UNHCR. There's some cooperation with them, although technically, I've helped them more than they helped us in terms of the number of projects that they have going.
Can I ask about Ukraine?
Yeah.
And what the situation here is with statelessness?
Yeah, it's about 80,000 stateless people. Most of them became stateless due to the collapse of Soviet Union, and so they ended up being in Ukraine, but they didn't have the propiska, I guess. And so,
why not? Where are they from? Are they? I mean, are they Ukrainian?
Many of them are Ukrainians, but when you don't have a piece of paper that can identify you as that.
Oh, God forbid.
Yeah, God forbid. You don't have that piece of paper.
Piece of paper.
Yes, so, you can't prove it. And so a lot of stateless people, they become stateless because of that change of borders, of that change of some country breaking down into multiple countries. And then there's awkward situation where some people, former migrants from another country that came to another country and they didn't do some registration or something.
So for those 80,000 in Ukraine that are stateless, what does that look like? How are their lives different? What can they not do?
It's rather horrible, as usually is for stateless people. It's not really nice sort of life because all the rights that you have, all the rights that anybody has, they are usually connected with your nationality. So, put in a very crude way, we are all property of some country, okay?
Yeah, I've never thought about it that way.
Belong to some country, and that is your nationality, okay? So it's like a stamp, it's like branding. You're American, you're German, and so on. And the rights, any human rights that you have is connected to that. Okay, so when you're not branded that way, I'm putting it in a really direct way.
Can I choose my brand? Can I be Nike?
Yeah, sometimes you can because sometimes one parent comes from one country, another parent from a country. It depends on laws. Yes, some countries allow that multi-branding, multinationality. Many countries don't allow that. And when you don't have a country, when you don't belong to any country, then you don't have any human rights whatsoever. You don't have a right to work. You don't have the right to education. You don't have
not even
right
work.
Yeah, of course not. Because the first thing you do when you find a job here in Ukraine, for instance, what do they ask you? Let me see your passport, right? And here, of course, they have two kinds of passports.
Not my job.
Well, yeah. Wait, let's not talk about it. But yeah. So usually, when you're in a local market here and you ask for a job, the first thing they ask you, of course, even when it's not official employment, as it's called here, they still want to see your passport, even when it's not official employment.
Sure.
Because they need to confirm that they're not hiring an illegal, right?
Okay. But I imagine many of these people are working illegally. Yeah,
some are working illegally, but trying to find a job like that, it's quite difficult, and it's also very, very risky. And the police like to raid these kind of companies, okay? So if they find out that a restaurant hasn't been checking, on some employees to make sure that they have their medical book or passport information down, then, they may do a raid and then take away, first of all, close the restaurant, fine them and stuff like that. So most businesses, they don't risk going through that.
So these 80,000 Ukrainians, who are not Ukrainians because they don't have a piece of paper, they can't work technically in most cases or in all cases.
In all cases, but Ukraine is actually No, it's when you compare it to Western countries, I want to say that it's actually, well, I have to be sensitive here because I mean, on the one hand, there's a low deference to law. So, like I said, you can get like unofficial employment, or you can find an employer that can look the other way in terms of whether you have a passport or not. So there's a better chance of you finding that sort of employment in Ukraine as compared to like Germany or US and Canada.
Yeah.
Right? Because things are not as law-abiding here.
Okay, yeah, it's less regulated.
Yeah, but that's not. But I mean, the economic conditions are also here not that great. So if you can find that sort of job, I mean, people who are legally employed here, they're earning like peanuts here, right? So, if you're not, if you are a stateless person here and who wants to work, you're not gonna get peanuts. You get like fractions of peanuts.
I don't know about peanut. I think almonds.
Yeah. You're thinking like, you're not gonna get almonds.
Maybe walnuts. Some people get walnuts.
This is the salaries are really not that. I guess for us, we're fortunate that way. But
so they can't work legally. They can't travel. Probably.
Yeah,
so
of
easily.
Course not. No, you can't even like leave the border. You can't like go.
So you're stuck and you can't work.
You can't even be deported because where are they going to deport you? Because there's no country of origin, and usually the stateless people are from the country where they're located.
They're stuck. They're like in limbo.
Yeah, it's like that movie that people keep mentioning, like The Terminal, except
the terminal.
The airport is like the country you're in.
That's a funny movie.
So, and I mean, it's crazy, but most of the people who are stateless, they are stateless in their own country. They are second, third, or fourth, or fifth generation.
I have a question about refugees, for example, coming from Syria. Do they classify as stateless in Europe?
No, only a small percentage of them classify as stateless.
Okay.
The small percentage that are status, by the way, there's some theories, some stupid theories out there like, if you're stateless, then you get like better treatment or something like that. No, that's absurd. If you are a Syrian who cannot prove own nationality because let's say you got robbed along the way and they took your documents, or your house was bombed and so all your paperwork went up in flames and you cannot get any new paperwork because that internal ministry is also up in flames in your country. So, or because, even if it was not in flames, you go out there and say, okay, I need new documents. And they'll say, okay, can you at least give us birth certificate? And then they'll say, no, everything burned out. So how are you
bad
gonna...
situation. So they're stateless.
Yeah,
they have
so imagine, your city that, where you have US... citizenship. Okay, so imagine, again, people storm Congress.
Hard to imagine.
So anyway, there's a civil war and then, bombs flying and then your house, happens to...
There's a man wearing a raccoon on his head.
Yes. He burned down your house, okay? And all of your paperwork was in there, okay? So you have no documentation whatsoever now. And I guess that's the importance of like making electronic copies nowadays.
Yeah,
you can store it in like cloud storage.
Yeah, it's a bit silly and archaic, I think, to think that if you lose a piece of paper or some physical thing, poof, you can be stateless.
Yes, the great thing is that there's many papers that you have to lose at the same time, but it is possible. It is possible. So as long as you can keep one of the papers, you're kind of safe. But if you lose all of them, it's like the reverse of like catch 'em all Pokemon game. Like so
the papers
don't lose them all is the point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also your cash papers.
Yeah,
too.
but that happens like you wanted to talk about like cryptocurrency. This is what like
how'd you know?
This is an example where like in the news sometimes we hear like, oh, this guy has like $36 billion in Bitcoin, but he can't access his wallet because he lost a piece of paper, right? So, and he forgot the code.
Or the guy who lost his laptop.
Well, that's
in
not
a dump
bad.
or something like that.
Oh,
Try and find it in a dump.
Yeah, but if it's in cold storage. Cold storage is when you put the Bitcoin like on a particular device.
This blows my mind. It's beyond my understanding.
Yeah. So if you lose the piece of paper where your word, the different words are for the access in your password,
Yeah.
or in case you lose your password. And then you forget your password or you lose your password as well. If you lose those two things, you will never access.
And you're effed. And you lost your Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
you didn't
Do
lose
you know
it.
your
You just can't access
Do you
it.
know your passwords? I know you have Bitcoin.
Yes.
Actually, you recently sold your Bitcoin, didn't you?
Well, I was a funny story. I mean, I mostly invested in companies that deal with crypto technology.
Okay.
So I don't have that much in terms of cryptocurrency.
Not directly.
Some symbolic amount.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the future, sort of thing.
And do you diversify into different cryptocurrencies?
The major few. Yeah, the major few, and
that's what, Ethereum.
Ethereum and Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Yeah. And a little bit in what's it called? What's wrong with XRP?
I don't know.
Ripple.
Ripple.
Yeah.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, it's
Sign me up.
Yeah, it's
Ripple.
it's US based cryptocurrency. But the problem with it is that you don't mine it, so it's not limited supply. Technically, technically it is limited supply because they only released a certain number of Ripple. But the problem is that theoretically speaking, they can do it again. So that is why the value of Ripple is capped, sort of to a lower amounts, because people don't trust that the owners of Ripple or the founders and makers of Ripple won't be making more Ripple, right? So that's why Ripple is like 50 cents per Ripple, whereas Bitcoin is $50,000 per Bitcoin. So there will only be 21 million Bitcoins.
By the way, we're getting to that time, and so maybe you can give our listeners sum up something about the NGO work that you do about statelessness.
Sure.
To maybe help people be more aware of that or something.
Yeah. So I didn't even finish, talking about what I'm establishing. So I warned you. I can go on and on in details. So after I moved to Ukraine, I became more active. I became more connected with the major organizations that deal with statelessness. And one of the things that I've noticed when I was a lecturer and researcher in this topic is that the stateless people themselves are not well connected at all to the international organizations that are trying to help them. And so when I was interviewing some of the best experts in the field on statelessness, when I was interviewing or talking with UN experts on migration and statelessness, when I was talking to the heads of these major organizations that deal with statelessness, one of the first questions that I will ask is, how many stateless people do you actually know? And the most common response, well, we don't know anybody. And this really shocked me. Like, you guys are the leaders in this field, but you're not connected to the stateless people themselves. You're not connected.
And how do you know about for instance, in Ukraine, 80,000? How do we know it's 80,000?
Well, first of all, I mean, stateless people are very hard to account for because of the lack of paperwork.
Plus or minus.
So yes, it's usually the numbers that you would hear are very conservative numbers. It's numbers that, I mean, it's the people who we were able to count. Okay, so it's at least 80. That's why we always like to use the phrase "at least" in front of the numbers. So yeah, in European Union, it's at least 400,000 people, and I'm more of an expert in European Union statelessness.
Okay.
And yes, European Union, unbeknown to many people, I mean, has one of the largest concentration of stateless people in the whole world. Most of them are Europeans themselves, who just happen to be there and happen to be of Ron ethnicity, as awkward as it may sound.
What do you think is one thing that more people should know about the situation?
Well,
for our millions of listeners.
Yes, I mean, you should read up on the topic on your own time. I mean, I think it'd be hard to provide a very concise or fair and concise account of what it is.
Okay.
Don't be confused by the term.
Like it's not refugee
status.
Yes,
it's not refugees. Some refugees are stateless because they lost the documents on the way from escaping the violence from their own country. It is it is not homeless people. We hear this a lot. Oh, is it like homeless people? It's like, no. I mean, kind of in a very metaphorical way, yes, but not in a literal way. The problem is, the first problem that we have is that there's such a lack of awareness of what is statelessness.
Okay.
And for a lot of people, I mean, it kind of blows their mind to hear that, oh, what do you mean you don't have a nationality? You know, it's like people take for granted that these things are not nature made, that these things are not written in the stars.
The construct, once again.
Yeah, it's human made, and as we tend to screw up a lot of things, there's a lot of problems with what we have made. And a lot of people don't fit into these narrow little categories of what it means to be, a German or Ukrainian, American, and so on. And I mean, there is not such a pure mathematical equation for it all. So it's important to understand that people are not they don't fit these pigeonholes that we invent, okay? And when they don't fit these pigeonholes, it can create a serious problem for these people.
So I've never heard that word before. Pigeonhole.
Oh, you really?
It's a hole where a pigeon lives.
No, it's a term meaning like specific categories where we try. It's like stereotypes, okay? So pigeonholing is like putting somebody or trying to make some sort of judgment based on a stereotype.
Okay. Shout out to pigeons.
Yeah, they invented this term. No, we did, of course.
So to wrap up, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
I asked you about the most ridiculous, absurd thing about life. In less than a minute or so, do you think you could tell me what the most fun thing about your life is?
About my life?
About your life specifically.
Wow, the most fun thing. I think...
besides doing this podcast.
I'll keep it... Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. Yeah,
for me too.
Let me know if you want me to come out again.
Yeah.
So... I think it's about the simple things, it's being able to enjoy the simple things and being able to...
Like honey.
Yeah, honey.
Birds chirping.
And just being good and just caring for yourself and others, it's about that. And it's about that balance. Yeah, appreciating it.
Yeah. Well, man, thanks for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you here again.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me over.
Yeah, take care. Have a good one.